the thing with football, you can get hurt in practice. You can get hurt in preseason games. You can get hurt because of what is required to get ready for the sport training, because the training typically requires a lot of weights, right? You're putting weights on your body that you probably don't do in baseball or basketball. It's much lighter, higher repetition. There's just no avoiding it. And Kyle Shanahan is not running the Junction Boys out there, and they have a ton of starters now. Not knock on wood, not major injuries. Not this guy's out on IR, probably not going to see him again. This guy's ruptured an Achilles, but just your typical hammy pulls, growing strains. Who knows? Danny Gray's got about 6 different little nicks and knacks, and Elijah Mitchell is out till the regular season. Like, they have several starters that it doesn't seem like too serious, but they got hurt. Hell, Eric Armstead, who has been very durable for the 49ers, I think got hurt the first day of practice, not pads, the first day of practice. I guess ultimately my point is, and the NFL's clearly been very attempted to be very progressive with the concussion thing, right? They've gone above and beyond with these helmet things, even though I guess Andre Dillard and Mulata, the Aussie guy, both got concussions on the same day in practice. So it even shows you there's just no avoiding in the sport of football injuries. I think you can mitigate them, like major injuries, attempt to, but I don't think you can ever stop them. So I'm not blaming anybody. I feel all the players like Jimmie Ward, like these guys are in elite shape. Definitely both Wards, and they're both, who knows? I mean, Jimmie Ward might miss the rest of the month. Might have got hurt. I mean, he didn't play in the game. I mean, did he get hurt yesterday in a borderline walkthrough practice? I heard Greg Papa driving back from practice say, last night they had like it was like a team dinner / season ticket holder, one of those cheesy things that, I mean, a lot of teams do. And Jimmie Ward was supposed to be on stage, but he was getting an MRI
treatment. Oh, okay.
So I think it's fair to say that happened yesterday in practice.
Landon says, is it time to worry about the injuries in the secondary? I wouldn't use the word worry. I do think you're very aware as we've gone out to practice from the beginning of the open practices. And when practice first started, you looked out and you saw Jimmie Ward, Charvarius Ward. Eventually, actually, I guess you didn't see it right away, but then Emmanuel Mosley showed up. When they had that group, and we haven't seen Armstead out there, but the front 7 plus those corners, plus the safeties. I mean, it was clear Hufanga has taken position as the other starting safety next to Ward, and Charvarius Ward and Emmanuel Mosley are absolutely solidified at corners. Well, I have a prediction, John. This week, they're going to go practice with the Vikings, and somebody on the Niners defense is going to start a fight. And the reason they're going to start a fight is one of the things that's going to make them a really good defense is that they fly to the ball and they tackle, but you don't really get to do much of that in these practices. Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen are not going up against the Niners' best corners. They're not practicing this week. And I think the Niners, somebody on that defense is going to get tired of the fact that these practices, A, are not set up for them to succeed, and B, they do not have their best players out there. Because it's just, you notice the difference when you look out and name whoever is out there, Diamador Lenore,
Ambry Thomas,
Leon O'Neal, the rookie from A&M. When you look out there, and it's not those guys that for a few weeks we've been saying are a big part of why this defense can be a lot better than last year and maybe even as good or better than the 2019 defense. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe Fred's going to hit somebody. Maybe Hufanga is going to hit somebody. Maybe Kinlaw is just going to start. I don't know. But this could be a bumpy week for them because they're secondary. And again, it feels like Charvarius Ward and Emmanuel Mosley are just precaution, and they'll be back by the time the season rolls along. The Jimmie Ward one sounds like it's a little more, but you just don't until you see when somebody's dealing with a hamstring. My default is always they're back when I see them back on the field. I don't assume when you say it's a week on a hamstring that just in a week that person's walking back through the door.
Yeah, especially when it comes to speed guys. And to me, that's wide receivers and corners.
Leon O'Neal got cut. Who's wearing 14 in practice? Who's wearing 14 today?
Well, I think they moved. He got cut, I thought, last week. Again, I don't even know who that player is.
14 was out there today. Oh, Ken Crawley. My bad.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean,
Ken Crawley. I guess.
It just, to me, it just shows you like I don't have any expectations for these guys. I don't need to see anything, but and they're lucky. The first couple weeks, I guess even by the second week, like the Bears are a joke. The Bears suck, and their offensive line is the Niners should fucking destroy them. But even the second week, Geno Smith, like we can make fun of him, and he deserves to be made fun of if he has a terrible year. But like early on in the season, who's to say you can't just throw a couple bombs if those guys are dinged up and you got backups in there against DK and Tyler Lockett?
Well,
that would they're just make you a little nervous. Like those two guys. Now, not having Russell there is a big deal. But I know this: if Ward, and Mosley, let's say 2 or 3 of them are just battling injuries out, like you do not sleep well all week just knowing that Lockett and DK are out there flying around, right?
I mean, that's at the highest level with those two. Like you and I agree the Bears are not very good. I watched some of their preseason game. Darnell Mooney, Tajay Sharp. They actually, when you look at their group of guys, like both of them made spectacular catches. They don't have a complete schmucks playing wide receiver week 1.
Mooney's good. They can't block.
Sharp's been a good player before.
He's gonna get killed.
Yeah, again, I'm not saying they're great. It's just they are just going to have to make some plays in the secondary this year. It's just going to be part of the deal, and you hope that you're not. You just hope that in week 3 we look back and all of that's a distant memory.
But here's the thing: by the time you get to week 2, I think Seattle's probably going to suck. But they got 2 receivers. Week 3, you got Denver and Russell Wilson, who Albert Breer said it's basically Russell Wilson Inc. on offense. I'm like, is that a good thing, or does he just gets to?
I think they're going to finish 4th in the AFC West.
But what Russell Wilson Inc. means is he's going to throw the ball a lot. And I think week 4 is the Rams. So, I mean, you got right away, you're going to face passing attacks or teams. We'll see what Seattle actually becomes. But, I mean, they just gave a wide receiver $60 million. And I would imagine if you were at practice, I can't imagine they have 3 or 4 better players on their team than Tyler Lockett, right? So, I mean, their best 2 players, honestly, might be their 2 wide receivers. Honestly, it has to be. Who else would even be in the conversation on Seattle? Those 2
Did
guys.
you say J.J. Arcega-Whiteside?
I would put him down the list, but Jamal, he wouldn't be up there. DK has to be the best player in Seattle, right? With Russell gone?
Yeah.
And who would be
not
better
that he would have been better, but Bobby Wagner's gone.
I think their best 2 players are those 2 guys.
I'm just doing a quick check to make sure enough. I mean, he's terrifying. He's terrifying. I'm just doing a quick roster check.
But ultimately, what they represent, and I think the league represents now, is it's a passing league. And I think you saw it last year. Now, they're much better equipped to handle it this year because they have more bodies. But every team in the league wants to throw bombs. Every single one. And the schedule that they have, think about that. Mahomes, Andy, they dream about throwing. Denver is going to be a throwing offense. I mean, the Chargers, they're a passing team. Obviously, the Raiders, they'll mix it up, but I would say with their personnel, Waller, Renfro, and Devontae, like that is just a tough matchup, right? I mean, that's 3 legitimate slot receiver, one of the best outside wide receiver, or one of them, and a tight end that's really kind of like this hybrid. And you could say, well, Fred, like that's a Jimmie Ward linebacker combination type guy you cover him with, right? You got Fred below him and Jimmie above him, probably. So, and we all love Hufanga, and everyone's rooting for him. And that hit he had on Friday night was so badass. But time will tell about just him in space, because it is a space game now. I don't want to say the NFL is the Big 12, but it's definitely not what the 1998 Big 10 was. It's much more of a passing league. And, the Niners had the worst possible case, right? They had a bunch of injuries, and they had to sign this guy up the scrap heap, and it fucked them. You just could throw at him nonstop. That's not going to be the case this year, but the case is that, like, you still need to defend the pass, and it's always going to be, unless you have, we'll see. I mean, people were very high on Ward, and he should be fine. But I also think you're anointing him like, I don't think he's ever been to a Pro Bowl. He's a good player, but it's good players still get beat. And I talked to a buddy on the Chiefs. They're like, they loved him. They still do. They're like, if he had great hands, he doesn't have great hands, kind of a Namdi style. Now he's a smoother athlete, but like That's why he puts his hands on a lot of balls and doesn't catch it. That's where like J.C. Jackson is basically a wide receiver too. Like he can pick the ball. And listen, at corner, I don't need you to pick it as long as you're touching it. I mean, the Niners, their guys last year were like looking the other way. So, I mean, PBUs, if they just get a group that PBUs half the times that they didn't last year, that's a huge step forward. And let's face it, the strength of their team is the 7 guys up front. They just need the back, wouldn't you say, to be healthy one and just consistently solid. They're not looking for Deion Sanders here. I heard Pop the other day say that he thought this group could be like the 94 Niners. I'm like, Greg, I fucking love you, but I mean, come on, take off the rose, the red glasses. They had Deion Sanders, who's the greatest hover corner in the history of the league. Tim McDonald, Merton Hanks, like Google their resumes. Both those guys were going to Pro Bowls. And I'm pretty sure Eric Davis was like a high-end starter for a period of time in his career. Like that was a high-end secondary with one of the greatest players, not just at his position, in the history of the league, Deion in his prime. So like that's the 49ers don't need to be that because their front 7 should be the best top 2 or 3 in the league as a front 7. Like the Jim Harbaugh Niners, their DBs were just solid. Their front 7 did all the shit.
But I do think Charvarius Ward has a chance to kind of even elevate his perception going from a team that's going to be viewed this year as, even though it's Kyle Shanahan's team, I think a lot of people are ready for them to be defense first versus playing for the Chiefs where, you don't get quite the credit maybe because that offense is A, what gets you a lot of credit, and B, just puts you in games where you are playing a lot of defense because teams are throwing against you. So
yeah, you're always up, so they're just throwing bombs. Yeah, it's different.
And this pass and the pass rush, like you said, I mean, there's going to create opportunities for these guys to pick off passes, and the ball will be in the air if the Niners have the lead.
I'm not trying to be critical on Ward, but I think Ward can just be like, what if he's just a really good player? Like, there's a difference between really, really good player and some lock like Pro Bowler.
Yeah, you're right, but I think if he's on the field, the chances of him more than earning his money, I think, are really high. Because we've seen what they've been.
But you can earn your money and not be like a top 2 or 3 corner in the league.
Well, like we've seen what they've been. We saw what they did last year with less than great cornerback play. With, honestly, were liabilities in the pass game at times.
Disaster.
So, to me, it's not going to take much for it to look like a high-level, championship-level defense. But they just got to be on the field. Think about it. If we went back to the Niners football reference page, under Kyle Shanahan, they have high highs and low lows. And the low lows have been injury-plagued seasons. That's what's made them bad. When they have injuries, they are bad. That's what's happened with them. Right now, one of them was a Jimmie injury season, and a quarterback injury season is what it is. But
which derails most teams.
But that's the only thing that can stop this defense from being fantastic this year. Like, oh, maybe they're all together and they're not as good as we thought. Like, to me, if they're all together and they're not as good as we thought, I think they're still a top 10 defense with the potential of being a top 3 deep, right? So their floor is really high as long as they're healthy.
I agree.
But they got to be, you'd like to have them all out there together. I guess the good news is you have more good players this year on defense, so you can maybe handle. And they've got veteran safeties like Tarvarius Moore and George Odom. Like, these are not guys that, if they have to play, create major problems.
Odom played a lot on the Colts, who have been one of the more consistent defenses in the league the last several years. And obviously Moore, who got injured, has been a guy that played a lot for Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh. Like, he's a legitimate NFL player. But I do wonder.
Afford injuries as linebacker.
Yeah, see, I think they do such a good job of cultivating guys. And the other thing, here's the difference between DBs and linebackers. As the league becomes more pass heavy, a linebacker's always coming off the field and more DBs are coming on the field. So it's like, I actually think you can, just because it's a numbers game. If, let's say, Greenlaw has a major injury like last year and is gone, well, then you just bump up a guy, but you're only have 2 linebackers on the field so much, it's only just 51 and 54 the whole time. Where at corner, it's like it snowballs fast because you have 3 or 4 of them on the field a lot of these games. So it's just kind of a numbers thing. It happens to you fast. And the one thing that's pretty clear at practice with their linebackers, they have a lot of athletic linebackers. And maybe that's just the type guys coming into the league. But at corner, most corners, I bet if you went, I mean, a guy like Jalen Ramsey would really stand out. But if you just went team to team, when they're all just standing there, wouldn't you say most DBs, similar kind of body types? I mean, some safety's a little bigger,
Yeah,
but just,
yeah.
5'11" to 6'1", all kind of thinner, linear. You've never seen a chubby DB. They all kind of look the same, but they clearly don't all play the same. But the majority of the body types are all within the same vicinity. Like Mosley, I guess even Ward, I don't think he's that tall. I haven't seen him in a while now, but like Mosley, I mean, Jason Verrett is actually on the smaller side, but he's such an elite athlete. In theory, I don't know. He's had 7 million ACLs since and Achilles. Every time I keep hearing about when Jason Verrett, it's like, listen, it's one thing like if you pop a tire and then you pop another tire and you pop another, you can always get a new tire. Like how many times can you tear Achilles and tear ACLs and just like keep the same? Well, he's just still a 4.33 guy. It's like, I mean, you're eventually going to run, the law of diminishing returns. Like, I hit my max, my 4th ACL, and they clearly love the guy. I mean, that is a player that they have a super, super soft spot for. Clearly the human, obviously
when
talent,
he's been on the field, he's been really good for them, right? At times he's been their best corner,
but major injury after major injury.
Yeah. But they don't have a team that's relying on him this year necessarily, right? They better not.
No, they clearly don't.
Like this roster is one of a team that's had issues at corner before and, made an effort. You just don't want to, Kyle Shanahan said it, like you want to start fast. You just don't want to start behind the 8 ball with that group. But I mean, part of that is like we'll get to Trey Lance, but this kind of leads us to what you've been saying, which is the pass rush. And you and I have talked about this before. Like how important is it to spend money on corners? You've said it, you'd rather spend that money on guys that get to the quarterback because they will make your corners better.